I suppose we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you for being here this evening. I know it's kind of a rainy one today, but what better time to cozy up in the library and learn something new? Tonight's Tech Talk is going to be about a service called Canva. Now this whole particular round of Tech Talks has been about internet available services. So we've talked about things like YouTube, which provides video content, Google, which provides a search engine, and Facebook, which is a social media platform. And today, Canva, that is going to be a graphic design platform. And while those other three, they've been on the scene for a long time now, coming up on like 25 years for most of them. Canva is pretty new on the scene and it's really taking off. It's become a highly popular service. Many individuals and businesses are using this service for all kinds of stuff. I know the library, I can tell you, certainly makes massive amounts of use of this. Everything from our promotional materials, from our flyers. I've developed our logo through Canva, and promotional materials, handouts, stickers, all kinds of stuff. But this platform is very special because it's not one that requires as much instruction or fancy, expensive software as other programs like, let's say, Adobe Photoshop, for example. I remember using Adobe Photoshop a little bit in high school and a little bit in college, and I still needed an instructor to tell me what all the little tiny icons meant. There's just dozens and dozens of them, and there's endless things you can do with it, but you have to know how it works, be taught, and pay a lot of money to use it usually. Canva is quite the opposite. Canva was designed with accessibility in mind. It's meant to be used by everyday people for all kinds of things. So it might be easier to ask, what can't Canva do in terms of what it can make? Because it does everything from flyers, posters, bookmarks, PowerPoint style presentations. You can edit images on it, you can build websites with it, you can make animated social media posts. So we're gonna keep it really simple today and start with just kind of a foundational project that's gonna be fun, and you will be able to see some of the basic features that make using Canva easy. Because if you have a foundation of where to start, what you're looking at, knowing where things are, then it's a lot easier to explore those other more in-depth surfaces and features that Canva has. So with that, I would like to say something before we get started. I exclusively use the free version of Canva. It does have a paid version called Canva Pro, and I've not needed it because the free version is so equipped. I have not ever felt the need like I'm missing out on any of its services, at least not as of yet. If you are a full-blown business and you're really putting this program to work, I can see how this would be a good investment, but I haven't needed it yet either. So that's one of the other things that I like about this service, and a lot of the other services we've talked about in this Tech Talk series is that they are all free. So the free version will be the one we're using today. And I don't know if you can kind of see it, but there's a tiny little gold crown icon. That's going to indicate all the features that would require the paid account to use. But I haven't had that really get in my way terribly often. So with that, I suppose we'll dive in. Let's say we're going to make a design. We're going to design something today. As it says, what will you design today? I'm going to make a hypothetical situation where I want to have a block party over the summer. And I want to put up a flyer that I can put all around the block to let my neighbors know that we're going to do a block party, everybody's invited, and that kind of thing. So I want it to essentially look like an 8.5 by 11 paper that I can print easily, post around, and have all my who, what, when, where, whys, and hows clear on that poster, right? So I might use the term poster and flyer interchangeably, but that's what I'm talking about. So to begin with, do we have any questions before we dive in?
Yes, how did you get to the site? Are you going to cover that?
Yep.
Do we go to Google or?
So you would open up an internet browser
Okay.
of your choice, whether it be Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, what have you. And in the address bar, you would type canva.com.
Capital or
It's
does it matter?
not case sensitive, nope.
What is your internet?
Absolutely. It's going to be the one called Crawford Guest,
Okay.
or Crawford Library Guest.
Just connect. And the password?
Footprints. All lowercase, one word.
Thanks.
Yes, and that reminds me of something else. Thank you for asking that, Cheryl. Because when we go to canva.com, if you don't have an account yet, it will require you to create an account, which you just use an email address and a password. And the reason for the account is so that you can return to that design to keep working on it in the future. And as you'll see in my account, I have made a gajillion, million, tons of designs, and it all shows up in your history there. So I might have to do another Canva series that's beginner, intermediate, and then advanced, because there's some really cool features that save you a lot of time if you're doing this kind of thing often. But
I think I have a Canva account, but I don't remember setting up a, and maybe I did. I guess I was in the throes of trying to get it together, but I was wondering how that would happen, but maybe I'll ask once we get started a little further.
Yes, and if you need some time to get logged in, I can totally accommodate that, no problem.
It was all like a whirlwind.
Okay. Well, so we want to start a design. There's a couple of different ways that we can select what type of document or item that we're trying to make. First, we can use these icons, because this is the landing page. So whenever you're logged in, this will be kind of where you end up, the dashboard as it were. And if you're looking to start a new design, you've got a few options. They've got these little tabs here. They have a search bar, so you can kind of tell it like, I want to make bookmarks, I want to make invitations, or whatever. Or you can use these icons down here to kind of narrow down what you're going for. An example. Let's see here, and maybe I can make this a little bigger, let's see. Okay, there, that's a little better. Okay, so I just zoomed in a little bit so we can see these icons better, but this is a social media one. So as the librarian, I manage the library's Facebook page. If I've got an event that I made a flyer for, but now I want to make a Facebook event cover, I can do that very specifically. So I'll select social media, and it'll have these different social media platforms available. And if I select Facebook, I can then scroll down and I can do a Facebook post. I could do an event cover. And what's fun about this is that they have already looked up what those pixel proportions are so that it'll look right when you do save this and post it on those different social medias. So I make a lot of use of those. But I'm going to close out of that real quick. So besides these icons, we could also look up templates or search for things. So let's say we know we want to make a flyer. We could look up flyer. And that will search for templates relating to flyers. Let me get that out of the way. So
where did you find templates?
There's two places you can look. You can search for templates, or you can select templates. So if I just generally click on templates, it'll make those appear on the bottom.
I guess I don't see it, but oh, templates is over there. Never mind.
Okay. It may or may not be oriented a little different depending
it is,
on.
But I mean, totally
because this menu will sometimes expand itself. You can always shrink it down.
Yeah.
And then I've got mine blown up quite a bit,
That's
so
true.
that it's going to throw off maybe the placement.
So
of
it
some
doesn't
things.
matter where you get it. Like, do you see templates down below?
Yep.
Create. There we go.
Yep.
So it's the same thing.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Pretty much. That's a more dedicated one because it took away the search bar and that kind of thing.
Okay.
You can still search, but if you just scroll back up from templates to home, it'll
Okay.
bring you back to that landing page.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
absolutely, and great question. So we can look for templates, we can specify what type of thing we're making. Now because I'm constantly making flyers, it kind of has these appear as favorites of mine. So this is a flyer in portrait orientation, a flyer in landscape, and I believe if we hover over it, it specifies what its measurements are. One of these other icons that's kind of out of the way here, we can specify our own custom size as well. So if we know, for example, that we want to make an 8.5 by 11 in a portrait fashion, I can click on custom size here, and we have boxes where we can put in those measurements. Now it's important to note that it comes in pixels, inches, millimeters, and centimeters. So if you type in pixels and put 8.5 by 11 pixels, it's going to be micro tiny. But if you specify inches, then you can put in, I want it to be 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches high. And you can create. Now it also will pull up other templates that fit those measurements. So if you know for a fact that you're looking to do a letter, like a professional letter, or a magazine cover, you can select those, or you can simply create a new design and it'll give you a from scratch blank 8.5 by 11 document. Okay, so we've talked about how we can search for templates. We can use the icons to be specific about what we're trying to do. We can specify our own custom size, or we can refer to recent designs. So this was a flyer for an event that I made recently. If I liked that, I could use that as a template as well. All right.
Do you usually use the ones that they have provided? Or do you build your own every time?
I generally will often start from scratch because sometimes what I want is a little simpler than all of the fanciness that comes with a template.
Okay.
But the design we're going to make today will be from scratch, for example, just to show you some of the foundational elements of how to add things on there.
Okay.
But if we were to use a template, so if I scroll back over here and I'd want to see flyer portrait oriented templates. Oh, that was the wrong one. I want to see flyer templates.
I mean, they have like 20,000 elements,
Yes.
so it's so overwhelming. It's like, oh.
It can be. And that's a good thing to point out maybe right now as well is let's say we're looking for flyer templates and we want to narrow that down a little bit.
I was just gonna say, did you want to look on a screen? I guess you're looking at one, but okay. Let's say you're more than welcome. Yes.
So,
Yeah, so let's say we wanted to select one of these templates. You'll notice that little crown icon indicating that that template is available if you have a paid one.
Right.
But all the ones that don't have it are free to use. You can chop them up, take things in and out of them. Let's say we wanted to do this dessert flyer just so that you can see what it looks like a little bit.
Okay.
So it'll give you a preview of it, what this flyer will look like if it was printed out. Here's kind of a full size, whatever. And if we decided, yeah, that fits the bill for what I'm going for, then you can select customize this template. And if we did that, it'll open a new tab so that you can still see your search history. But if we go to that new tab, it'll open the design space basically. And we'll make room for ourselves here. We'll zoom in on the design. And we can move things around, we can change the color, we can customize it to the nines once we're in there. So just to give you a very general sense of what that looks like.
Did you have to unlock it? Because for a little while I was getting so frustrated because I couldn't get anything. I'm like, oh, I bet that little lock thing.
Are you talking about the lock that's in the design
padlock?
space?
Yeah.
We'll
Go over to that.
we'll
Okay.
talk
Yeah, I was
talk
like,
about that
oh,
for sure.
okay, thanks.
yeah.
All right, welcome in. How's it going? Good. Please make yourself at home. All right, so for today's purposes, We've talked about a handful of ways to get started, but let's go ahead and do the getting started part. I would like to do just a plain old portrait flyer. And that's going to open up a nice 8.5 by 11 blank document. Hello. How's it going, guys? So, what are we looking at as we're in this new design space? There's a lot going on here. I'm just going to zoom that in a little bit, but just to kind of walk us around the screen, we have our main menu, which this little lines icon opens up, shows us those tabs from the home page, and we can use those to navigate back and forth. We can also see recent designs if you have them. And then if we're going to minimize that and continue across the top, file is where our options are going to be. All right. And if you click on file, you'll see a place where you can rename the document. You can create a new design, or you can access your settings.
That was under
File.
Gotcha.
Yep. And a pro tip, as we go into any design, I always recommend going into File, down to Settings, and selecting the things that you want to be able to see all the time. For example, if we show the margins, it'll put this dotted line here that shows us approximate margins that usually work really well with print.
And can you show one more time how you got their file settings and what you hit?
File,
Okay, settings.
Settings, and then Show Margins.
Oh, okay.
And that
the
check,
things you want off or on. Oh,
yep,
okay.
that check will uncheck and recheck itself as you go in and click on it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna unselect that, and you'll see that those middle lines disappear.
So you don't want the margins?
Maybe not for this one.
Okay.
Something else that I want to see though, if I go back to File and Settings, let's see, I definitely want to be able to see the rulers and guides. So I'm gonna do that, and what that does is it puts a ruler on the top and at bottom, or on the top and side, excuse me, of that document so that I can see where I'm at in the document. And if you, hey guys, do you mind really keeping it down for presentation purpose? Thank you. All right. If with your cursor, you take your mouse and hover it over here, you'll notice that the cursor changed from the usual arrow to kind of these like double direction arrows. And what that means is if we click and drag out, we can put our own guide in there. Now that doesn't show up on the printed document, but if I wanted to know where the center was all the time, I can put that guide there so that when I put things on the document, I can automatically line it up and know that it's centered. So that's an example, and if we zoom out, I could put another one in the middle of the document, and you can tell about where you are. So 11.5 would be 5 1/4, or thereabouts. So, and it kind of will automatically hop into those different base points, like clear center from left and top. So, again, File, Settings, show, you can select what you want to be able to see. Rulers and guides is the one that I find most helpful. Margins is good if you are trying to do documents or letters, because those are pretty standard margins. And then another one, which can be helpful, is the Show Print Bleed. And print bleed is an old journalism, newsprint making term. So when they would make magazines, the editors would design all these things on the page, and then when they would print it, it would come out on a page that was usually like a 1/2 inch bigger than whatever the final size was going to be, and they actually shaved those off. So it's the bleed over image that got shaved off. So that's where that term comes from. But if you show the print bleed, it'll tell you essentially where the very edge of your functional space is. If you put a graphic or text really close to the edge. If you get too close to that print bleed, it'll probably not show up when it prints. It'll get trimmed off. Basically, the printer might not be able to handle stuff to that. So oftentimes, because I like to maximize my space on a flyer if I can, I like to set at the smallest margins I'll set for myself is usually 1/4 inch, just for good measure. So, but yeah, pro tip, rulers and guides can be really, really helpful.
Okay.
All right, so navigating the menu a little further. So we've talked about this, we've talked about file. Over here, we can see our share button, which we'll come back to when we're done with our design for how to, once we've made it, how to use it and share it and print it. And then we'll start down here. This little icon is super handy. This little question mark in a circle is if you're ever looking for something and have no idea where it is, or you can't remember, or if you want to know what is possible, you can ask Canva. It's a little AI bot, but if I'm like, where do I find, where can I add graphics from? And it'll give you a pretty thorough answer with steps, and it'll tell you where stuff is. Because sometimes I'm looking for a feature and I'm like, I don't know where on the screen that was. Please tell me where the bold button is, you know, to like bold text or something. And it will tell you all about where you can find those answers. So, and what's cool is even if I close this, for that whole session, for the whole time you're at the computer working on it, your question history will be there, so you can keep referring back to it.
Can you show, where was that again?
Yeah.
Bottom right hand.
Little.
Yep. This,
Oh, I gotcha.
Yep.
Makes sense.
It's called the Ask Canva button.
Okay.
And then these other icons down here are just kind of like view icons. So if you had more than one page, you could see them side by side. So I only have the one, so I have the option to add one if I wanted to. And I can click back out of that to bring it normal. It'll tell me how many pages I have, and it'll tell me how closely I am zoomed in or out of the document, just here. And I can use this to slide in and out as well, but I love keyboard shortcuts. I'm a fan of those myself, so what I like to use is Control and then the scroll wheel on the mouse. So if I am in the document, I press Control and I scroll up with my mouse, that zooms in. Now, I do happen to accidentally scroll not just the document, but sometimes the whole window, and I'll show you what that looks like. There's no need to feel embarrassed, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I just wanted to zoom in on the document, not blow up the whole page. But you can just back out. And the trick is if you're in the menu or on the top of the window, then that'll zoom in the whole window versus just the document. And you'll notice there, the side menus are not changing size. Okay. And then...
Is there a place to find the shortcuts? Because some of them are different than anything that I had been used to. Is there like a...
Well, I see you're using a Windows machine, so it's going to be different from like a MacBook or an Apple computer. The biggest difference between Mac and Apple shortcuts on keyboards is that Windows will use the Control button, and Mac has its own command button with its own little curly Q icon on it. But Control Paste, for example, or to copy and paste, those things are all pretty standard.
Okay,
Yep.
I did find, yeah, some of it was like, Control what?
Yes. For example, one of the shortcuts for getting those guides to pop in and out, I believe, is Shift and then the letter R, and that makes the rulers go away. So if you watch here and here, I'm going to do it again, Shift R, and I brought the rulers back. Notice it also makes the guides disappear. So Shift R is great if you're trying to see like, okay, I got it centered, how's the final product look? And you can kind of like, all right, approximate what your flyer will look like. All right, so I'm gonna leave those rulers and guides up though. And then lastly on this bottom row, we have notes. So let's say There's things about the document, whether like I want to make it fun, I can leave notes for myself, like fun but not too serious of a flyer. Or I can say I really liked the copperplate Gothic font. I can make notes to myself here. And those are just for your reference in this design space. None of that appears on the design, on the printed product or anything. That's just a place for you to make note of things.
I think I missed where you got it.
Sure, I'm gonna close it.
Okay.
And then it's gonna be this
Oh,
last.
under notes down here.
Yep.
I see it. Sorry, I might have been looking down here.
No apologies necessary. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. Okay, so we've gone all the way across, and then it's just that menu again. And this is where we're going to be doing a lot of our designing, is from this leftmost menu. Do you have any questions so far? I know there's a lot going on here.
Will it work to do it on my iPad, or do I need to be on a?
I have used it on my iPad. I know that personally I prefer to use a computer where I can use a mouse, because sometimes where you're placing things is very delicate and fine, but the biggest recommendation I have for iPad use or tablet use is making use of those guides and the centering options, because if you're trying to specifically place something, you don't have that like pixel level specificity that you do with a mouse and a keyboard. But if you have your guides lined up where you want things, then you can snap it into place.
Okay.
Good questions. All right. So this side menu, I'm gonna just briefly describe what each of these things has in it, and then we'll get to the fun part. Okay. So this first section here, and if you click on any of them, it'll formally show all the way up. You can minimize it if you want your workspace back, or you can hover over it to see just a little menu and then click out of it. So I'm gonna full on click it so that it stays put. This first tab menu is called Design, and that's where we can find templates. So we started from scratch with a nice blank document. But let's say we're like, maybe I do want a template. I can look for them here. So let's say block party. I want to see if there's any block party templates, and there's a handful. And if I'm looking through these, I can decide whether or not I like one. And if you do, you can click it and it'll put that template on your document. And if you're like, oh no, I really don't want that, you can do the undo button on the screen, or Control Z. Control Z and Y is undo and redo. So I'm gonna click out of here and say no more template. All right, so design is where you can see templates. You can specify, they've got maybe like styles or subject matter. So I like Mother's Day is coming up, so they've got Mother's Day posters, templates that you could use. Some of the templates are fun to just scroll through and see what pretty ones there are, ones that look fun. So they've got it broken up into templates and styles. So let's say we were going for a really modern or minimalist style or something. We could say modern. And we'll get a bunch of different things. So like they've got terms like sleek, professional. Let's say professional, just to see. Professional templates. These look very corporate, very official. But so yeah, there's a lot to play around with in there. But we're gonna move on. Elements is gonna be where we spend a lot of our time. Elements includes everything from shapes to graphics or kind of like clip art style images, or like actual photos. So if we scroll down a little bit, we see shapes, we see graphics. They have an AI image generator if you're into those. They have animated stickers, so if you're making online content, these animations will actually play in your saved image. You can use photos.
Can we use our own photos?
Yes.
Yay.
Yep. And that one has its own little tab icon, so we'll come back around to that. And they have some videos and stuff, and you can preview the videos by hovering over them with your mouse to see what they look like. We're not going to have videos because we're making something for print. So they also have charts. I've used the charts before because you can put data in there and it makes this adorable chart.
Oh, wow.
Very presentational, very nice. Tables and frames. We're not going to talk too much about frames, but essentially it's a shape that you can put on your page, and then when you put your own picture into it, it'll fill just that frame. So if you've got a circle, if you want to make your picture, let's say it's a portrait, and you want to put the person's face in a circle, you can put a circular frame and then put the picture in there, line up the picture, and then it just shows the circular edge instead of the whole square image. So elements, and we'll be playing around with this here in a minute. I'm just going briefly over these. To answer your question, there's the separate one for uploads, and that's where you can add your own images. If you're on a tablet or a device, it'll probably ask, there'll be like a little pop-up that says, would you like to select photos that this app can use, or would you like it to have access to your photo library?
Okay.
Yep, so that's about what it'll look like there. And from a computer, it will, if we click here, we see this purple button to upload files, and that will bring up a window where we can navigate from our computer where we want those files to come from.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yep. All right, and then lastly is text. Now there's kind of 3 elements of the text tab that are handy, especially. You can just very generally add a text box, and that puts a text box in the middle of your page there. And when it's highlighted blue, it means it's ready to be typed in. So, and I'm gonna remove that. So we can add a text box. We can, if you know you want kind of like 2025 block party, Ash Street, and then body text, you can use these headings, subheadings, and body text. So if I select heading and subheading and body text, it'll stack them in a certain way, kind of reminiscent to what PowerPoint does. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. But all of these, once they're on there, they can still be moved. They're not locked together like we're going to talk about later. They're not locked together, and you can still adjust their size and their font. So nothing is set in stone, but sometimes you know you want big text and you don't want to have to do extra steps. All right. And then the third area, so general text box, size specific, and then they have these kind of like pre-made fonts where it's got like a stylized pair of fonts that'll be side by side. Maybe they'll be like at a different angle, but these are kind of pre-styled. So they might be good for like a heading or a title for a flyer or a business card or something like that. So I actually really kind of like this one. They have a whole bunch, and you can scroll. Some of them cost, or you have to have the pro account. But I've noticed that sometimes they'll put all the paid ones on one side, so that way you can focus on the ones that don't require the payment. And if you click on one, it'll tell you, like, this one requires Canva Pro, and it'll be very keen to remind you and ask if you really want to become a pro account member.
You should sign up now.
Yeah, while supplies last. But I kind of enjoy this one, just to play with. So if I click on that, it'll just put it in my document. And I'm going to scoot that over, and here we can see, as we hover over it, we have kind of options that are specific to that item. This little purple box outlines what we're currently working with on the page. If we clicked out of it onto here, we can see that purple box goes to the edge of the document. And if we click back into here, we can see that we're working with this particular group of items. Yep. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so in this little menu here, we can see that it says ungroup. What they mean by that is that it's taken these two text boxes, this one that says spring, this one that says collection, and it's grouped them together so that when we drag them around, they move together. So they've made it spaced and arranged kind of cute, so collection fits between the hang down of the P and the G. So they've done that stylistically, and that's why they're grouped. Now in that text area, a lot of those pre-paired font titles will be grouped. It's not permanent, but it just means that they will move together when you drag them around the document.
And so you can't ungroup them.
You absolutely can.
Okay, I just saw that part.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have selected that, and then we can select ungroup, and now you see they both have their own purple box.
Gotcha.
So we can click out of there and select just spring and move it independently from the pair. And again, if we ever were like, I didn't mean to do that, we can use the undo button or a nice Control Z, and that will include the grouping as well. So, so now they're grouped again, and if I do that, it separates them. Okay. So I like these two for the title of our block party flyer, right? So I'm gonna, if you've ungrouped things, you can use your mouse to, in the empty space of the document, create kind of a selection box to select them again to move a whole handful of things.
Okay, say that.
But they're still ungrouped.
They're ungrouped, so there's
So
that.
you just use that box to group them temporarily.
Yep, so what I'm doing with the mouse is I'm holding a left click and dragging it across the elements that I want to move, but it's not grouping them permanently, it's just saying I want to move these things out of the way, or what have you. But if you get them spaced in a place that you like, you can regroup them. You would select multiple elements, and then you have the option to group them. And then they will move together.
Ashley, you just moved it over into the pink. Can you do that? Just store them over there?
If you move it all the way out, so you see how the purple box is all the way off the document?
Right.
It will get rid of it.
Oh, okay. So
But-
put it on the paper.
But if I wanted to just kind of get it out of the way a little bit, I do set things in the margins.
Okay.
But you want to be able to see it in the margins, or else it'll completely remove it from your, it's like shoving it off the table.
Right, okay.
Like a cat.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I do, sometimes if I'm trying to decide between different graphics or clip art, I'll set like 3 of them on the side, and then I'll bring them each in, like, I like this one, the rest of you can go.
Sure.
So, great question.
What's the, whenever you go back to the, we're under text, right?
Yep.
What's the magic right?
Magic Write is an AI tool
Okay,
that will
kind of what I-
generate text for you.
Okay.
So I don't usually use it. I like to keep things really simple for flyers, depending on what kind of thing. But if you're using this to make a resume, you could say, professionally state that I used to work at a burger joint, and it'll tell you like,
Yeah.
I have professional experience doing this with the culinary industry, you know, and it'll flavor it a certain way.
Okay.
So
I mean, I know enough about it to even experiment with it, but I was just kind of curious.
when you have time, feel free to play with it,
Yeah.
because I believe, okay, so they have a free option for you to use it, and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. So you can play with it 50 times for free.
Oh, but it is one of those you pay for.
Yes.
Okay.
But if you had a Canva Pro account, then you'd be able to use it whenever you wanted all the time.
Okay.
But great question. Okay. So let's say we're ready to start designing that element of our document. Another pro tip, just before we get too far. I'm gonna ungroup these. You see how the text is in the middle, but the box goes really far out to the side? Sometimes that can be problematic when you're trying to select multiple things on a page. So it can be helpful, and if it's not a big deal, then don't worry about it. But it can be helpful to use these little grab dots or grab bars on the left and right. You'll see here that they're kind of bars and then they're dots in the corner. The bars will shrink that text box down so that it's about the size of the text, for example. In this case, it's just one word. If we had a whole paragraph in here, springtime is so fun, I love it, exclamation point, okay. And that's not properly typed, but we can use those grab bars to shrink the text box down and it'll bump the text to another line. There's a lot of different ways to manipulate text in Canva, and that's one of them. So I'm gonna say just spring. But I will often shrink it down to the size of the text box that I actually want it to be, especially if it's like a single word. That way, if I have pretty border imagery on the side, it's not making me select the text and that border imagery because it's bars all the way out. Okay, and I'll do the same here. And because this text box is set to be centered, the text box will keep the text there. If it's aligned to the left, when I move that box, it'll place it accordingly. So I'm gonna put it back to center. Okay, and all right. So there's a handful of ways to manipulate text. Let's say we wanted to change the size of this text box. There's a couple of ways we can do that. The font, we can select, we can adjust it by clicking plus and minus, and that will increase it. Or because the text box wasn't wide enough, it's gonna bump those letters down. So if you instead want to say just this size of the text box, but proportionally make it bigger, we can use the grab dots. And that will make it bigger and smaller. So depending on how you like to have your text boxes or whatever works best for you, it will determine how you manipulate the size of the text, for example.
And if you want to bring, I was telling Ashley before you came, I put together a flyer. So, but I mean, I bet it took me 8 hours just to get to the part I did, and it was like, I'm so proud of myself, you know?
Yeah.
But just learning something new. But one thing that does remind me, how do you put color in your text?
Color into your text, an excellent question. Let's say we want to change the color of the letters, right? So I'm gonna select this text box, and here is where we change the font color.
Sure.
So this is where we change the font itself. You can search for different things, you can select from these different kind of groupings, or you can just scroll through and see what kind of other options they have, like this one, or whatever. This is again for the size, and this is for the font color. So let's say we want a nice purple. We can select these pre-chosen dots, or we can use the rainbow selector to add our very own color. So let's say we wanted it to be blue. I'm gonna click approximately blue, and then on this rainbow bar to say approximately where I want it, and then I'm gonna grab this dot to move it around to say, I want it to be really pale blue, or I want it to be very dark blue.
Oh gosh.
So you can be very specific. But let's say I like the green. Okay. But yes, great question. Whenever you want to see options for a particular element that's on your page, you're going to want to click on it to select it, and then this bar will tell you what options are available.
Okay.
Whether it's for font, it'll show font size, style, color. Not all fonts will be able to be bolded or italicized or underlined. Some of them have that built in and some of them don't. And then this one indicates whether or not you want all the letters to be capitalized or not. So if you select all caps or just as it was, mixed case. This is alignment, and so if we had a bunch of text, it would center that text based on whether it was left justified, centered, right justified, or there's a one called justified where it evens all the words to the edge of the text box so that it looks like a nice full paragraph block.
And that's for whatever box you're clicked on.
Yes, for
Okay.
text. When we have images on there, you'll see that that menu looks a little different.
Okay.
And then these, we can make a bulleted list if we wanted to, or a numbered list. And then this, I don't know if you guys noticed earlier, springtime is so fun. But you see how they're kind of really squished in there?
Mhm.
If we go to this line spacing area, we can spread them out a little bit. Letter spacing. So this is line spacing. All the lines are really snug. If we bring that down, you see how the text box is adjusting itself?
Sure.
Mhm.
And then if we click out so we can see, now we can see that they're all on their own line.
Gotcha.
And then letter spacing will space the letters out or tighten them up. Okay. Spreading. All right. There we have it. And all right. So we've talked about how you can resize text and the different ways of manipulating it from your menu bar that appears for text. But we're gonna go ahead and move on through the design. So I know that I want this to be a summer block party. So I need to open up my text box a little bit. And this one I want to say block party. Now this font, we see it's all caps. That might be because the font itself is all capitalized anyway. So if you don't like that, you can select a different font if you want to. But I'm gonna center these. Okay, so when I select a text box, dragging it around, because I put that center guide, if I kind of roll over towards it, it'll eventually snap to. And you see how the measurement line appears at the top to indicate that that is the center guide. We can bump it there and then we know it's centered. We can do the same here. But I wanna make this bigger. I want it to fit under the whole word summer. So I can kind of line it up with that text box too. Now do you see that dotted line that's appearing on the edge there? Those are just kind of handy guides that will appear, and what it's referring to, that line, is that is the edge of this text box for this element. And then I'm gonna scoot it up so that they're kind of sitting on top of each other. Okay. And then, okay. So both these text boxes, and if I select them both, you'll see they're both aligned with each other. So that's what those dotted lines were referring to. All right, so we have a title for our flyer. Summer block party, it's gonna be awesome. Okay. Now we can, so we've got our title, we wanna add some body text. So I'm just gonna go over to the text and add just a general text box. Let's see. And it's picked a font that's kind of silly. So I'm gonna pick a simple one like this one, a sans serif font. I'm gonna tell it, let's start at 36 so we can see it. And we can always adjust that later. Okay, so for the text, I wanted to explain what the deal is with the summer block party. So because the library is on Ash Street, I'm just gonna say that. Residents of Ash Street are invited to join in on a block wide. And I always can correct that afterward. Barbecue. Okay. Boop. Block wide barbecue. Alright, and that should do. Alright, so I'm gonna zoom out so I can see more of the page. So I've got my title, I've got some body text. I would like those lines to be a little closer together. And I don't need the text box itself to span the whole edge to edge. So I'm gonna use that grab bar to straighten it out a little bit. That looks neat and centered. And maybe I want it to be in line with that title as well. So it's about that size. Just for fun, just cause. And maybe I want that smack dab in the middle of the document. And since I've made my kind of crosshairs here, I can line that up really easy. And so just to show you again, if I'm dragging it around and I want it to snap to that centermost point of the document, I am lined up with one and then the other. And you'll see both those lines extend off the page when it says you're perfectly centered with those guides. So there we have it. So we've added a title and we've added some body text. We've got the what and the who and why of it. But let's say we want to add another text box that says when it is. But we want it to be exactly this size text and exactly that size font. A little cheat is you can copy it either by right-clicking and selecting copy or using Control-C. And then you can right-click in the document to say paste. Yeah. Or you can say paste. And now we've got two of them. And then we can just type in Friday, July 4th at 1 p.m. Boop. And it's centered. So now there's just a cheat. If you've already picked all the font and the size and you don't want to have to do it again, you can just copy a text box and refill it with what you want it to say. All right. So we've done the boring part of getting all the information and the data in there. Now we can decorate it. Okay.
What about, where's it at?
Oh, Olive Ash Street. Let's see. In my notes, I prepared a whole thing that says, well, seeing as it's a block party, it would be the whole block of Ash Street from
It doesn't matter.
From
It's
First
fictitious.
to Second Street. Yeah, I mean, this is an example, but yes. So a good flyer will always have the who, what, where, and when at the very least.
And why?
And why, ideally.
Yeah.
So from First to Second Street. Are invited to join in on a block-wide barbecue, so this grid.
Very good.
Yep. All right. And let's say we want to decorate it, right? We have a handful of different things that we can just do on a base level. We could change the background color of the document itself, which is fun, but if you've got if you're printing from home, that can take up a lot of ink.
Yeah.
So whenever possible, I like to use graphics instead to add color to the document. And so I'm gonna scoot this one up, and I'm just using the keyboard keys to go kind of like one little bit at a time. Let's say I have, just real quick, I have the title here, I have this text box here, and I like where this one is, but I want this one to be squarely in the middle of these two elements. I can select this text box and line it up along the center line until it says that it's precisely the same amount of pixels between the edge of this one and the edge of that one.
I see.
Yeah, so just a fun thing to center things.
Another pro tip.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can move elements between two other elements to find the center.
Okay.
All right, adding graphics. Okay, so let's say we have a really colorful neighborhood. We want to have a colorful flyer. We're gonna go to elements, and rather than shapes, I'm gonna go with graphics. So I'm just gonna click on graphics in general. And I wanna say, show me a house. So it's gonna give me a lot of little cute icons, graphics. These are the equivalent of clip art, like we used to see in Word and that kind of thing. Obviously the crowns indicate that that's paid material. Someone paid actual artists to design those and make those available. But this is a nice, pleasant little house icon. So if I click on it, it'll add it to the image, to the document, and we can adjust its size with the grab dots. If you select the corner ones, it'll keep the current ratio of that image, and if you select the sidebars, it'll kind of crop the image down. So just so that you're aware. But I'm gonna make a tiny little neighborhood maybe across the bottom. So I really like this graphic though. So if I wanted to see maybe if there was more like that, I could go to that icon and there's these little ellipses that show up. I can click on those and say, see more like this. And if I click on that, it'll show me other icons that are similar, yeah.
Oh, cool.
So like, oh, that one's really cute. So I'm gonna add that. Sometimes the images or graphics will give you options to change some of the colors that are in them. So like this house is kind of pink and this one's kind of orange and they look a little too the same. I can say, make it a purple house. And I can change parts of the image's color. So just if you look here, you can see that we changed it from orange to blue or purple. That way we have a little variety in our neighborhood, even though the house designs are kind of similar. And then maybe a third house. But I really like that one too. I could see more specifically like that. We don't have any houses like this in Crawford, but but that would be fun. An apartment building. Maybe that one goes on the side. Put that one in the middle. All right. So we've added some of those elements. And here again, you can see how like between those two images, we're centering it between them so that they're equidistant. There we go. Yeah. All right, whole block party. And so if I'm putting these images down here, maybe I want to complete the scene with like some clouds and maybe a sun on the top. I can go back up to my search bar and let's say a sun. I can search for specific things and it gives you this whole slew of icons to choose from. This one seems very cute. Maybe it's a little pale. Maybe I want it to be a blazing sun. And I can move it maybe to this corner of the document. And I don't mind if a little bit of the edge sun gets cut off in the print or something, but, and then maybe I want to move all of this down just a little.
So that one looks like it went behind the wording. Can you put it in front, behind, or
Yes.
since it's lettering, it goes automatically behind?
So what you're referring to is called layering.
Right.
So just as if you had these texts and images cut out on construction paper to glue onto this document, you can say what goes on top and everything. To do that, you'll select an image, you'll right click on it to see more options about it, and if you go to the layer thing, you can tell it to maybe scoot up one to come up a little more forward in the document, or scoot back one, or you can tell it to go all the way to the back or all the way to the front if you have a whole bunch of stuff on the page. Excellent question. Let's see. So there's that. Now, let's say I want it to be like behind all this text, but I don't want it to be so bold. I want to be able to see the text better. One of the options that we have available to us with graphics and text is an opacity option. So if we see up here, now that we're working with an image, we don't see things like font like we did before, but we see that we could edit the images, like putting different filters on it. We can change the color of that image. If there's we can add a border if we wanted. We can crop it so that, let's say we just wanted half the sun, and we could put half that sun at the top, like that. Or we could change its transparency. So let's say I brought that down to like 75. Now it's a little more see-through, and maybe the text is easier to see since we've got this nice contrast going on a little bit. So that's a handy thing to be able to do, is to adjust the transparency of something so that you can kind of see through it a little bit. All right, and then maybe one more graphic, like a cloud. Okay, I like this one, but it's paid. This one's kind of comparable. Cute and gray, but not too storm threatening. And I can set a few of them. Let's say I like that size, I can copy it, paste it, and get a second one to put somewhere else. Like right there. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna get this graphic thing out of the way, and now we have the makings of a flyer. I wouldn't say this one's finished and polished and ready for print, but we've got all the goods on there. Let's see. If you did want to change the background color of the whole document, you would select it so that that purple box selects the whole page, and then you'll select the color wheel here to say maybe it's all pink. And notice how that pink wraps around like there's not like a white box around these different graphics. Those graphics are just like construction paper cutouts. So, but if you added, if we, for example, had an image on here, let me go back. Photos. If we added this image, it would be boxy, you see. But you could, layer it behind and in front of things. Or let's say instead of a color, we wanted the background to be an image. Give me a plain background again. So let's say we wanted an image like that to be our background. What we can do is, let's see, so we have that image selected. It's got this little rotate icon. Oops, I'll scoot it over a little bit. We've got this rotate icon, so we could turn it around, or we can use the grab dots to proportionally make it cover the whole page, and then we're going to right click on it and send it all the way to the back layer so that all that stuff is on top. And then I wanted to make a sense of ground, right? I could go to shapes, add a square, click, and let's pretend it's green grass, more green. And I can move that text box to maybe halfway behind the houses, make it at least as wide as the document, and send it back. And I'm going to keep sending it back, back, back. So now I've made my, an alternate sky and grass kind of situation. So it can be as detailed and as in-depth as you'd like it to be, but I hope you've got lots of ink for that design.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's say we're done. We love it. We are ready to get this out onto the block so that everybody knows when and where this block party is going to be. What we would do is we can save it and share it in different ways, but it's all going to be from that upper right hand share button. So let's zoom that in just a touch. Let's say we wanted to share. The download button is going to be your best friend. So if we select download, we can save it as a number of different things. So I know that when I'm making flyers for the library, I will usually save it as an image, like a JPEG, and a PDF, because PDFs print nice, and JPEGs are great for posting on Facebook. So I might say JPEG, and then the download button.
Did you say PDF and JPEG?
I will do both oftentimes because PDFs print really well, and JPEGs are nice to upload online. So a digital image is great for sharing digitally. So like whether you're texting it to somebody or emailing or posting on a website or social media. A PDF is great also if you're emailing or printing. So we saved it as a JPEG, and in our browser here you see how the download icon is kind of blue. If we click on that, it'll show us where it downloaded to. Okay, let me bring this around. Okay, so this is a separate, we saved that flyer as an image file on our computer. So that's what this window is I opened that file. So now this can be emailed to people. I was trying to get it to, so we could see the whole thing. There we go. So there's our finished product saved as an image. Or we can go back to share, download, and then PDF for printing, and select download. Now because we haven't named the document, that's why it saves as your paragraph text.
That's what mine's still called.
Yeah, yep. But then we can open that by double clicking it, or you can open it where it got saved to. So if I pull this around, yes, show me that one. Okay. Here's the downloads folder where it saved that image and PDF to. And it's just generating that preview. So this one's ready for printing, this one's ready for sharing, and there you have it.
And you don't want to go print with Canva.
Okay, so print with Canva, they offer a service where if you have a design that you've made, they will, like Shutterfly does for your images or whatever, you can order actual prints of your document on different levels of like cardstock. So let's say you designed a business card on here, and it's like, would you like to print that with Canva? If you do, you can use this button and it'll ask you what kind of paper you want to use, like what thickness, whether you want it to be glossy finish or matte finish. And depending on the selections you make, so you can select standard paper, premium paper, that kind of thing, the finish, and how many. And the more you order for them, the cheaper the price is. Because, so if you only wanted one flyer with all of this, they would ask for $9.75. If you wanted, what's their max, 1,000 flyers like that, they would be 20 cents each for $200. So, and they will print them and mail them right to you. I've not used that personally because I usually have access to a printer, and it's a really feasible, cheap way to produce promotional materials. Like, I just made a whole bunch of stickers for the school, and so I did it on an 8.5 template, and I put in my own guides to say where the sticker sheets were going to be, and then I put images on each of those areas and then printed them right here. So, but yeah, so that's what the print with Canva button does. I think that would be especially useful if you're doing odd shaped things like invitations, bookmarks, or business cards. Things that might be harder to produce on your own.
I see.
So, holy monkeys, we have covered a lot of ground. But my hope is that with those foundational basics, whatever design you're working on, you'll be able to navigate it a little better. I really encourage everyone to take some time to explore those different things, like the elements. Like if you just click on shapes, you can see all the cool shapes that you can add in there. One time I used this shape to indicate like an award, and I made it gold, and I gave it a shadow, and I put like the person's name on the front, and it said certified awesome or something like that. You know, so there's a lot you can do with these basic elements. And now, that being said, Canva does get really fancy. You can get really fancy with a lot of this stuff, but sometimes just playing with the shapes is more than enough. And I mean, that doesn't look too beginner, I would say,
No, I think it looks good.
versus maybe what I could have done in Word. You know, it would have been much plainer, maybe some clip art, maybe some color, but nothing to this level of design.
Nice.
So, any questions?
When you mention you can do it 50 times, does that mean entering it 50 times or 50 projects?
The projects are essentially unlimited. I've been using this account for at least 2 years and I've not found an edge yet. But regarding the specific area where it said you could use this feature 50 times, that was going to be in text. And that was going to be the magic right where the AI, where the AI is generating text for you based on your prompting.
Is that also what Dreamlab is too? Is that AI? I saw that somewhere and I was gonna ask.
It might have been on the home page. Let's see. If I go back.
Yes, where the lines are, the line, is that the home? No, the one above the home, the 3-lined, they need to have a name for that, what do they call them?
I know what you're talking about and I can't
Yeah.
quite remember where it's at. Dreamlab, I'm trying to remember because I think that's a relatively new feature that they put in there.
Oh,
But it might be, let me see, maybe it was in a blank design.
what will you imagine today? So maybe, I was just curious, I mean, it
It-
doesn't matter,
It might be its image generator, where you could tell it like, create me an image of a moonlit prairie, and it'll do its best, or something. So that might be what it's referring to, I don't quite recall.
You know what's really cool? It reminds me of the Word document that they used to have.
Yeah.
And now it felt like that changed so dramatically, but this reminds me of it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that was wonderful to use.
Yes, I know I had a lot of fun with Word growing up, and I played with it a lot more than I think most people did. But I just love how adaptable Canva is. It really has a lot nicer graphics, so many more options for the different things that you're trying to design. Allow me to grab a couple of examples of things that I've made recently with it, such as so this is the Friday events that are coming up, and that I used a real pale peach color in the background so as not to use too much ink, but I've got 2 events on the one flyer. This is a different size document, so I did specify, I customized the size of this document because it's 8.5 by 14, but I used an image as a border. I added these shapes of ovals. I layered the text so that the text was on top of them. I added these and placed like this kid coloring here. I placed him behind the text so that I could put his little kicked up legs right snug up against that box. And this is a logo I designed in Canva and saved it as its own image, and I added on to stuff. And there was, I would guess, 4 hours worth of design put into that flyer. Between getting everything placed and getting like the text angled and in a way that was readable, and doing a test print to make sure my colors looked right. Because for example, this text was pale green to begin with, and I'm like, oh, I can't see that very well, so I changed the color. So another pro tip, do a test print to see how it looks. You'll find all the errors that you didn't see on the screen once you've printed it. But it's just such an adaptable platform, very accessible. I believe I watched a recording of a conference that the creators of this platform presented, and they designed it so that everybody could use it for all kinds of stuff. I think she had specifically invented it for college students to be able to design flyers quickly and easily and share them. Because once you've made a design on here, you can invite others to work on it with you. If we click on our design, go back into there, in that share button, we can share it with people. So let's say I wanted to send it to other Ashy, Ashy@outlook.com, for example. Let's say that was my email address. So I could write a little message that says, hey, share with me your thoughts, feel free to make changes, and then I can specify whether I just want you to comment on it, or just look at it, or full on edit it. And then so you two could work on a project together and being like, I found this cute graphic that works better in this space, or I found this image to use as a background, or I like this font better. And you can collaborate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Class project or group project or something.
Yep. So I know when I was in college and I was part of a campus club, the officers of that club, we'd all work on the flyers together, so that we could share them or email them to each other and that kind of stuff. So,
I'm just laughing because I'm looking at mine and like, mine looks so infantile. It's like, but just knowing how to get around and starting with just playing with it.
yeah.
Well, did you, while you were teaching, did you use Word much?
Mhm. Yeah.
And that was so easy after you figured it out.
Right.
So easy to get around on, and I used it a lot.
Mhm.
No, I do remember using that
Yeah.
too, and
Yeah,
and it does remind me of that too. I think the guts of this is kind of the same premise.
and that'll be so
Yes.
nice.
Yeah. I feel like it combines Word and PowerPoint in the way it kind
It
of
does
layers
kind of.
things.
I have one more question, but you may wish to go.
No,
Or-
no.
Okay, so I would kept trying to say this, I work on it at home, and then I load it to a jump drive and then go out to the museum,
Mhm.
which it's kind of a long ways from where we live. So I was like, oh, I got it on here. I would get out there 2 times and then bad words came out of my mouth when I didn't come like we were supposed to. It's like,
But if you have an account, you should be able to sign in from anywhere, shouldn't you? And bring it up.
But see, I don't have, this does not go to our copier at the museum.
This meaning your computer isn't
Sorry,
connected
yes, I mean,
to.
it is not, mine is not,
Mhm.
connected with the computer.
Could you put it on your email though, and bring it up on the other computer?
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're working on a design from your your personal computer,
Right.
and you want to be able to print it off at work.
Well, I really wanted to save it to the jump drive because I could take it to, but what I ended up doing is emailing it to the computer that was. But if I want it for future reference, I wanted it on my jump drive.
So when you say jump drive, is
Or
that
just those little stick drives that I
Okay.
guess are getting obsolete also, but it is something I can make use of.
so when if you are done with a design and you want to take it everywhere on a jump drive or a USB drive?
Right, that's, yes, thank
Yep.
you.
Nope,
I'm trying to say.
USB thumb drive, I've heard
Mhm.
they have a number of names, but if you're done with a design, that's a great way to move them around. I would recommend saving it as a PDF and or a JPEG,
Okay,
because most other computers can read those file types. So a PDF is a portable document file, that's what that means. So it's a document
okay.
that is easily read by most computers.
And JPEG.
Yep, and JPEG.
I thought I did, but obviously I didn't do something right, because 2 times that happened, and yeah, I thought there's gotta be a better way, but
So
I
do you-
figured out how to get it out there
Do you
eventually, but-
remember when we hit the share button
Yes.
and then did download,
Yes,
and then we selected what type of file we wanted, and then we hit download, and it saved to our computer's download folder.
okay, I'm sure it is saved here.
Yep, so I can maybe demonstrate here real quick. So
Okay.
I'm gonna share.
Okay.
Then she just
Download.
drag it in?
Yep, basically. So let's say I'm gonna select JPEG and then download. Now here it says it's working on it and it's completed. It saved it to this folder. And if I click on that, show folder, it'll bring up the folder in question. And in this case, it saved it to my downloads folder. So I've got this
Okay.
file, and this is a preview of that file. And I can right click it and cut and copy, Or let's say I had a thumb drive. Let's say this was the thumb drive that's plugged in. I can drag it to that thumb drive,
Okay.
and then I can take that thumb drive out and
That
take
makes
it
sense. I
everywhere.
didn't even think about dragging it.
Yep, so you can drag it, which will move the whole file to where it's going, or you can right click and here's cut and copy. So let's say I want to leave a copy here on this computer, but I also want a copy on the thumb drive. I can paste it into there either by right clicking and selecting paste directly on the drive, or by opening it and pasting it in there. Okay, the downloads is where that landed.
Okay, yeah, I mean, didn't even think that through. That would have been.
But if you're still trying to edit the document, then I would recommend just logging into your account from a web browser at the work computer and your personal one. So that way the design will still be there. So if I go home and I use this same account to log in, I'll be able to see all my designs.
Mine just, I'm not connected to that printer.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and I'm not sure they would, I don't know if they would allow it, but anyway.
Something else you can do too is, let's say we wanted to share this for viewing purposes or whatever to our work email so that we can print it from work. We can do that too. You would just pop your work email address in there. Maybe. Okay, so I could send it to my work email, and let's say I wanted to be able to edit it or save it as different file types, and then I would just share it. And it will send a link to this design to that email, and they will be able to either look at it, comment on it, and or edit it depending on what you selected
You
here.
said what to do, gotcha.
Yep, so then let's say on that back end we are at work, we went to the link and now we have the file open. We can share it and download it and print it from our work computer because it's got that connection to the printer. So I'm gonna save it as PDF, download, and I'm on the work computer. I'll go to where it saves and I'll send it to I think I can right click and print right from the files. But if not, then we would just select it to open it with a double click. And that will bring it up someplace. So it'll open it here, and this is just another browser preview, but we can hit that print button. And it, once it's all woke up and connected, you can send it right to your work printer. So now, the reason it looks all goofy here is because I've got this set to legal size instead of letter. Legal is that 8.5 by 14, and I want it to say letter. And now it'll look normal. So it'll print that. Now, depending on your print settings and everything, it may or may not have a white edge ever just, like a little bit. You might have seen it on the other flyers I showed earlier, but those are all print settings, so that's not necessarily a Canva issue. Excellent question.
No, thank you for so much information.
Yeah,
I know it's a lot, and we jumped around pretty organically, but again, if you've got those foundations and you know where stuff kind of is, the rest is just so much fun. And again, if you're ever not sure where something is, you can ask that little question dot. You're like, where can I find the shapes? Where did they go? And it's like, it's okay. The shapes can be found right here under elements.
And they don't think you're silly because you forgot.
Nope.
It's a machine. I know, right?
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley.
Really, this was a
Great questions.
good presentation.
Thank you.